Next we're going to be covering scenario 2. With a little time to spare, the researcher offers the participants to get through a VO2 max treadmill incremental test. During the test, one of the boys gives a thumbs down to indicate discomfort, but you insist he continues and tell him to stop being a cow's blouse, as he should be doing better than this. He's also tired that he slips back, getting off the back of the machine and twists his knee. You tell him to go and run it under the water as he can't see where the first aid kit is. This took some time, so you reduce the warm-up for the following participants on the treadmill in a bid to get them through, and decide to prioritise getting the better boys done first. 2 weeks later, you decide to use the data in the MSc dissertation and publish into the university's portal. So we're going to be evaluating scenario 2. For scenario 2, I found no pieces of good practice. All of it was bad, so this definitely couldn't go ahead. But firstly, we're going to cover the laboratory safety procedures. There are a number of safety procedures that a researcher must follow in order to ensure the maximal level of safety for everyone involved in the study. If for some reason these procedures aren't carried out, then the researcher would risk being liable to any claims regarding the safety of the participants involved. Also, if the researcher is willing to risk not fulfilling these steps, then the chance of the participant's safety being badly affected increases, therefore potentially damaging their career or the participants' aspects of their lives. Firstly, the researcher must take into account the ratio of numbers researchers to participants, so that perhaps safeguarding is followed. For example, in scenario 2, the researcher is working with the children, constantly must follow the ratios provided from the safeguarding program. Therefore, the researcher can't keep a constant monitor of the actions of the participants to ensure that they aren't risking their safety at any time and are behaving in a safe manner. Secondly, the hygiene of a laboratory must be kept as a sufficient standard to avoid possible contractions of disease or illness. For example, on a treadmill in a laboratory, like in scenario 2, it must be kept clean due to the sweat produced by the participants being spread onto the machine. Following on from this, there must also be a disposal of the dangerous equipment like a broken hydrogen cytometry bath to avoid possible injuries to risk an individual's safety. This is because the possibility of having a dangerous piece of equipment out in the laboratory is too risky for perhaps an organisation like Brighton University, and therefore to protect their reputation and ensure maximum safety, procedures are high priority. Following on from this, the contamination must also be avoided to keep people safe. For instance, sterile equipment is often used in order to prevent contamination of a substance, like different rubber gloves being used to clean a piece of equipment that has been previously used. Lastly, a researcher must also make sure that the use of the equipment is done safely to avoid possible physical or psychological harm. However, in terms of whether or not this scenario indicates the laboratory safety procedures were carried out, acts as a piece of poor practice. This is because evidence like the fact that the participant was so tired that when he came off the treadmill, he slipped and twisted his knee. The fact that the researcher allowed this participant to continue to use the piece of equipment and previously received the indication the participant was tired and using the equipment unsafely. Following on from this, the fact that the participant was told to run his knee into a tap could cause a lack of hygiene in the lab, due to the fact that the researcher is unaware of the extent of the hygiene that the participant knee is at, therefore violating the procedure. The hygiene levels get to a sufficient standard and possibly causing contamination through that. Secondly, the consequences of this. So, additionally, the researcher would have to feel the effect of certain consequences due to his poor practice of laboratory procedures, like an unsafe use of equipment. Therefore, the researcher would be liable for any injuries caused to this particular participant, which would result in consequences such as formal reprimand. This will involve the researcher possibly having their contract terminated with the organisation they represent, which may influence opportunities they are given in the future. Also, the fact that the hygiene levels weren't kept at a strong level may cause some level of physical harm to the researcher as a result of possible illnesses or conditions being spread by the injured participant, therefore possibly also causing psychological harm to them, depending on the degree of the effects of this poor level of hygiene. Additionally, the participant will also undergo some consequences. These are aspects like physical harm due to the injury or after getting off the treadmill, which may impact possibly their career in the future, becoming an athlete. Which in turn could cause some psychological harm. Additionally, therefore, possibly giving them the motive to make a claim against the organisation, which may also be quite a stressful time for them, And Also, it'd be a good point to make that might be put off by other research that's given to in the future because of these previous experience. Also, as a corrections, one of the corrections I would make to scenario 2, I would ensure that they are correct, the correct laboratory procedures are carried out. For example, I would ensure that the participant that was injured in the study was aware that they had the right to withdraw at any point to ensure the correct and safe use of equipment that caused that twisted knee, therefore preventing the injury from taking place to develop accurate lab results, and then avoiding certain consequences like claims against the researcher or the organisation behind the research. Also, we're moving to health screening. So there's another piece of poor practice. During scenario 2, one of the participants was injured, possibly due to the researcher not knowing the fitness level or the minerals to carry out the fitness test to the VO2 max. Whereas if a health screening questionnaire was carried out, then information possibly regarding how quickly the certain participant becomes fatigued and therefore prevent the test could be obtained and therefore prevent the test from lasting too long of a time. This would therefore allow the injury to be prevented. However, a health screening questionnaire would take up a significant amount of time, which, as stated, the researcher was shorter. Whereas a health screening questionnaire takes up the role checking the participant is mentally well enough to participate and therefore is extremely vital. For example, questions regarding recent medical incidents or medical history are included among many different topics regarding the lifestyle of each and every participant. Therefore, a detailed overview of their health can be developed to allow the researcher the decision on whether or not they can take part in the test. Consequently, as this part of the participants' requirements for research, I'd use this as a recommendation for scenario 2. It's because future screening that how their future health problems can be avoided or previous ones being more seriously developed. However, the health screening questionnaire should be well delivered, with accurate details being recorded with consent. Therefore, the health screening questionnaire would also be involved in the informed consent. But also the researcher would have to ensure that their delivery is appropriate and allows the participant to be calm and have a level mindset before taking part in the research. As previously mentioned, the participant underwent possibly serious consequences as a result of this scenario. However, more specifically, these could have been avoided if health screening questionnaire was done prior to the study that took place, whereas the participant obviously faced a number of consequences like physical and psychological harm, which were previously touched on. Due to the researcher not carrying out a health screening questionnaire, the researcher obviously also faced a number of consequences, which previously stated, like causing the injury to a participant or of psychological harm. Additionally, their ethical clearance could be removed due to the fact that they haven't carried out this ethical requirement. Therefore, also the psychological harm could affect them as well, depending on the degree that they've harmed the participant. Oh, sorry. And for my corrections, I've got an example of a small section of a health screening questionnaire. This covers topics such as emergency contact, diet, sleep patterns, exercise levels, medical history, important information, and emergency contact. This all ensures that they undergo safety requirements during the study, therefore prevent what was stated earlier. And then following on from this, another factor accounting for poor practice which occurred in scenario 2 would be the use of the first aid procedures. For example, during scenario 2, when the participant required use of the first aid kit, with the researcher was required to know the first aid, the kit was unavailable, which therefore led to the inefficient method of helping the injury with running it under the tap. As a result of this, the researchers violated their responsibilities of being a first aider, as they didn't perform the first aid procedures when required. As part of the health and safety requirements, there must be a dedicated first aider whilst research is being carried out, so that if an individual does require first aid, there is a minimal time for delay when possibly in a serious condition. However, the fact that the researcher hadn't prepared for the possibility of having to use their first aid kit, first aid abilities, could have caused the participant's injury to become even worse, and therefore may as well have not been trained in the first place. Due to the fact that the researcher didn't carry out the correct and consequently safe first aid procedures, the participant's injury could have been made worse. This is because aspects like not having a twisted knees in a comfortable or safe position may have caused an increase in the damage caused. As a result, the participant underwent a possible serious degree of physical harm due to this injury. Additionally, maybe keeping them from competing at such a high level in their particular sport, all from being down to the fact that the correct first aid procedures weren't carried out during their research. Along with the participant facing certain consequences due to the lack of correct first aid procedures being carried out, the researcher will also be forced to face a number of consequences. Firstly, the fact that no risk and no first aid kit could be found for the injured participant could mean that a claim against them and their organisation could be made. Therefore, possibly causing aspects of the criminal law being involved, which may include a fine or prison sentence depending on the scale of the participant's injury. Also, the fact that they have perhaps significantly damaged the participant's well-being could cause a degree of psychological harm to them, as they may be feeling the guilt of causing this and then additionally not taking care of it, consequently causing them to undergo therapy sessions in order to combat this, in turn removing more time from focusing on their main priorities like their university dissertation. For corrections that I make scenario 2 regarding the use of the first aid procedures would be to ensure that that a first aid kit is easily accessible for the researcher to use efficiently and safely on a possibly injured participant. Therefore, providing maximal care to the participant if something were to go wrong, and allowing an increased degree of insurance to the participant themselves, as they are aware that they can be provided to them as soon as possible. Additionally, whilst undergoing research, a researcher must ensure that a number of responsibilities are carried out, which are known as the researcher responsibilities. Firstly, each and every researcher has the responsibility to protect the participants against anything that may affect their safety. For example, this didn't occur during scenario 2, when the participant became injured due to the fact that the researcher didn't allow the participant to terminate the test when they're under significant fatigue, therefore acting as a piece of poor practice to scenario 2, as the research responsibilities weren't fully carried out. Secondly, another responsibility that a researcher must ensure is anticipating any ethical issues prior to the study session. For example, this could be the researcher anticipating an ethical issue like the participant not being respected by the other participants in terms of data, and therefore they could use anonymity when distributing results. Following on from this, the researcher must also monitor the participants during research sessions so that they can constantly provide actions dependent on what occurs. For instance, if a researcher was monitoring a session, noticed one of the participants has slipped over, then the researcher can react as quickly as possible and provide the sufficient care needed, with perhaps the first aid kit. Whereas, like in scenario 2, where the researcher perhaps wasn't monitoring the participant's significance of fatigue level, the participant was eventually seriously affected. Finally, there must be respect in handling of data, which may or may not be collected as a result of the research. For example, this wasn't carried out in scenario 2, once again, as the researcher used the data collected from the study in a dissertation without the consent from the participants, therefore showing little respect for the data which they produced, and consequently not effectively carrying out their research responsibilities. Due to the researcher not correctly carrying out all of their research responsibilities to the participant of the research which took place in scenario 2, some consequences may occur. For instance, the fact that the participant was efficiently monitored throughout the fitness test of VO2 max caused consequences of them becoming injured with a twisted knee, therefore potentially causing negative effects of their sporting career, which is previously explained through physical harm and psychological damage. Another reason for the researcher for facing certain consequences in scenario 2 would be doubts of many of the research responsibilities not being carried out. For instance, a claim could be made against the researcher due to the lack of safety provided as a part of their responsibilities. Additionally, this could also result in a suspension or fine from the Ethics and Review Committee or bases. This will be the end of video 1.